Saturday. Happy two-family lockdown walk. Amelia's busy exchanging daffodils with her cousins and refusing to pose for photos. She's just such a prima donna. It's unbelievable.
Welcome to another episode of Toby's Stupid Vlog.
Hi there, happy Tuesday. Yesterday the weather took a turn from the beautiful weekend we've had, and it was very, very cold yesterday, 6 degrees, plus I didn't feel super great. Crystal doesn't either. We've got another one of Amelia's wonderful colds. I feel a bit better today, it's worth noticing. But anyway, it was really cold. We went out for a walk. It was a bit miserable. And then we went to a farm shop in the afternoon because we could just sit in the car for most of that. And it's nice in the sun, but you don't want to be outdoors, so you want to experience the sun from the indoors. Today, similar situation in the morning, and now it's clouded over. It's grey and it's slightly cold, and it's going to be pretty cold for most of the rest of the week, which is disappointing because I just got used to the idea that spring was actually here. And then it retracted and spring is gone again. And, you know, I'm wearing a woolly hat, the occasional balaclava and, you know, long johns to keep myself warm. Not really what I was hoping for in April. Talking about expectations versus reality, I wonder how everyone's feeling who was all like, oh, 2021's going to be much better than the previous year. What a load of naive bullshit that was. I mean, I didn't believe it, to be honest. But really unhelpful when people start saying things like that. When it was clear that this was a pandemic and it was reaching the shores of the United Kingdom, I realistically thought that the very best case scenario would be a year of, you know, lockdowns and quarantining and restrictions, and it's obviously going to be a lot longer than that now. My revised best case scenario now is 18 months, maybe 20 months, realistically closer to 2 years. And if you're watching this and you'll be horrified by that, what I mean by is that some countries will be able to get back to mostly normal, but they won't be able to maintain it as long as some countries haven't. And there'll still be a restriction on movement and travel, and there'll be the constant threat of different variants. So I have to say that I've reached a point where I'm no longer feeling as compliant as I was. So I've been very much pro lockdowns. I've been very vocal on the subject when the government hasn't done the right thing at the right time, which is they've almost always done the right thing, but almost always at the wrong time. That's probably a fair assessment. But I've reached the point where if they decide that they're not going to allow international travel with some regularity by at least Q3 this year, I don't think I'm going to be quite as supportive of the measures as I have been up to this point. I'm certainly not convinced that I want to remain a citizen of this country for any length of time. I was already sceptical. That would definitely push me over the edge. I just think that the expectation management has been terrible. Even if it had been good, there's only so much goodwill you get, and you've got to stop taking your foot off the pedal because it's politically convenient at certain moments, whereas you need to actually deal with this thing properly. Now, the vaccine rollout programme in the United Kingdom has been one of the best in the world, but imagine that had been against the backdrop of very few cases inside of the United Kingdom anyway. Imagine if we'd had a proper closed border, controlled border situation for COVID from the beginning. Imagine if we even had one now, because we don't. Imagine if test and trace and isolate and support had been a proper system. Imagine if it was now. Can you imagine how much better things would be? Less lockdowns, much further along in the process, and talk of international travel could be managed because you would understand what you had to do. And everyone would have to take a PCR test and they'd be fine with it. But despite every opportunity to do the right thing, the smart thing, this government has basically fumbled, which is astounding, because usually crisis brings leadership, but in this case crisis has exposed a lack of leadership. So there's people on one side of the debate who are saying these lockdowns are ridiculous, they need to end now. Don't agree with that at all. There's people on the other side of the debate saying, how dare you relax the restrictions at all? There's going to be a third wave. The scientists say so. Don't think they've thoroughly understood the context in which scientists have been talking about this, and the papers that have been written, and the way that the vaccine works. So I don't agree with them either. So the middle road is possibly the best one, but expectation management is everything. Don't tell people they can do something and then put up barriers to it. Don't tell people there's not going to be vaccine passports and then start designing them. Like, just be honest. And it's worth noting that a part of me, a very cynical part of me, thinks that because Brexit has been handled so terribly, and because it's so obviously shit, with British businesses seriously struggling, and the idea of people being able to freely travel massively limited, even for touring musicians or anything like that, actually enforcing travel restrictions now makes the government look good when they finally get to lift them, and the shit scenario that we're left with looks good compared to what we have now. And I do think sometimes they're just trying to bury all the bad news, all the Brexit news, into the pandemic and make us feel like it's the pandemic that did it and not the terrible, terrible government we have. There's only two things that largely affect my mood, really. How terrible the government is and how terrible the weather is. And seeing as one of those is a constant, it's really just down to the weather fluctuating that I go, sort of up and down. I would say when work is a bit annoying, that doesn't help, but that comes and goes, and the others are a bit more all day. Would you like a good news story? I'm sure you would. I certainly needed one. So when they started developing the vaccines for COVID, and they started proving mRNA style vaccines like in Moderna and the BioNTech one, it seemed to me pretty clear that if that methodology works as it appears to do, then the ability to develop vaccines for all sorts of previously unvaccinatable conditions was going to be quite impressive. So, for example, if you wanted to, there's no reason you would, but if you wanted to and you had the resources to, you could develop a vaccine for all common colds using the same technology. Quite amazing. Wouldn't change society a lot, I don't think. I could be wrong. But actually what it's turned out is that they've managed to adapt to Moderna to work as a potential HIV vaccine. Isn't that impressive? Think of all the other viruses we could be vaccinated against soon. Hi, good morning. It's Wednesday and I've come for a walk along the Riverway. We actually drove past this last weekend, or actually it was the weekend? Yeah, Sunday. And I thought, that's really pretty, I need to come back here and go for a walk. So I have, because I have half a day to be leisurely, and that's what I'm doing. Plus I needed some fresh air. And it's a fascinating route. I've actually done a tiny bit of this before, it turns out. A lot when we get to the canal, and this is the Riverway. I actually did it with Amelia. It's near Wisley, which you may know is the Royal Horticultural Society Gardens. And yes, it looks very nice. It's very chilly today, unfortunately, but you just got to get outside, make the most of it. Now, just on my left here, if I turn past this tree, you will see the remains of Newark Priory. This was an Augustinian monk house, if you will. It's amazing, it's still there, sitting in a field, just remains of an old priory. Fascinating, wonderfully creepy, love it. Can't get to it, I don't believe. I think it's on private land. Anyway, I'm going to continue my little walk. and just have a bit of quiet and nature. There are a lot of golf courses. This part of the world is littered with golf courses, and then through a little housing estate, and suddenly you're out into English farmland, and it's very different and very charming. Smells of cows. I like it. It is, as I said, unfortunately not the most beautiful day ever, but still, you know, it's England. This is what you get. Bracing walks. Right, I'm gonna keep going until I hit a very, very straight path, which should be in a couple of kilometres. There's the housing estate, golf courses beyond, and obviously a lot of cows. This is the start of the farmland. And those up there are the Surrey Hills. Pleasant to just touch on the town very briefly. There's the church on the other side of the river. So it's Old Woking on that side of the river. Technically on this side of the river it's Send, which is a weird name for a place. There is a World War II bunker, and I'm just walking back along the Riverway until I get to the car, which is pretty much sort of 3 kilometres in this direction. In amongst the trees, that's where the car park is. That's the bridge across at the very start. So all in all it's about a 2-hour 10-minute walk, which is very nice, but I'm looking forward to having some lunch. Hello there, good afternoon. I just thought I'd record what I've been up to all day, because it's been one of those days that is just mentally exhausting. So since 8:45 this morning until about 20 minutes ago, I have been on continuous Teams calls trying to recruit a new chair for RHP. Our current chair, John, reaches the end of his term. That's the next AGM, and so we've been working through the recruitment process for a few months. And what we've done today is we had our short list of 5 candidates, and we've spoken to each of them one at a time, and then had a little conversation amongst ourselves about how we thought that it went, what we got from each of them, what we didn't. And it takes a lot of mental capacity, from my part at least, to talk to people and then about people continuously for a whole day, where you're constantly trying to probe and trying to find out things and clarify answers, and wow, it's just, and just staring at a screen for that long is not great, especially when you're having, you're making eye contact, you're not just reading stuff, virtual eye contact. So I'm absolutely mentally shattered, but I haven't done any exercise at all. Like, this is the first time I have been out of the flat today, and it's only very briefly been out of our little office and room. So it's a lot. It's one of these things that's really interesting, like really good learnings, and you learn things about yourself and how other people work, and it makes the idea of being a non-exec director fascinating and makes me want more, but simultaneously I need to lie down, and instead I'm about to do the opposite. I'm picking Amelia up from nursery in 10 minutes, and she's lovely, but she is not relaxing. So it'll be nice. A change is as good as a rest. Maybe it is. It certainly won't be a rest. So there we go. That's been my day, and I'm still analysing at least one of the candidates who was so fascinating and yet so terrifying at the same time, in terms of, like, if you were to appoint them. And I still don't know how I feel about it, so I'm still going through that. I'll report back when I've had more thoughts and maybe we've done more interviews and whatnot. Hello, happy Friday, good morning. Myself and this ridiculous child, we're going to Sainsbury's just because it's nice to get outside when the sun's out, and because I left the house only once yesterday, and that was to pick up Amelia. And it occurred to me when I looked at the date this morning, it being the 9th of April, that yesterday was the 11th anniversary of me starting these stupid vlogs. And I hadn't marked the occasion. I mean, it's an 11th anniversary, it's not exactly a big number, but last year we were slightly caught up in, pandemic and what have you, and I didn't even notice that the past 10 years we were going to go as a family to Valencia last year, which would have been 10 years since I went to Valencia before, and it would have been the place where the vlog started, which would have been nice. Obviously didn't happen, but it's noticeable how much has changed. Obviously 11 years is not a small amount of time, but it was before Amelia, before wedding, before I even met Crystal. In fact, not much. It was about 12 days before, which is interesting in itself. But yes, it would be nice to get back to Valencia. It would be nice to see where it all started. I have a real fondness for Valencia, partly because it's such a beautiful city, but also partly because of what I associate it with, both my vlogs and just the idea of vlogging generally. I watched a lot of vlogs of people in Valencia, which made me originally want to go, believe it or not. So, hi. I'd like to get back. I don't think we'll probably get back this year. As long as we leave the country once this year, that'll be a minor victory. Honestly, I'd like to go now. It's technically illegal. Although, well, no, it's not technically illegal for me or Amelia, though she doesn't have her German passport yet. But it would be illegal for us to go as a family, wouldn't it? Yeah, so we'll have to wait until the restrictions are lifted, but yeah, it sucks not being able to go to places. It's a nice way of spending a Friday afternoon. The sun's come out unexpectedly, and the little one's got a lot of energy, so we're just running around like a loon. Steps. You're going to be careful. Look where you're going then. Look where you're going. Whoa. Very wibbly. Well done.